The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. Yeah!
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to give you some money-saving tips for your swimming pool. I'm going to go over some things that may cost you a little bit of money up front, but in the long run, they're going to save you money later on. And I'll go over some other tips that you can use to save money on your swimming pool. Pool Service Pro. Open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro. This applies to both you as a homeowner and, of course, as a pool service professional, because the best way to increase your profits or to make sure you stay in business is to cut back on expenses that you can avoid. So I'm going to go over some of that as well. I think a lot of times we look at things in the way of, let's save some money here because this shouldn't cost this much, or this is really an expense that I want to avoid. Unfortunately, you have to understand the swimming pool industry, and I'll explain it to you this way. The pool industry tries to recapture all of the income in 6 months. And for this to happen, prices have to be elevated. This is not like something that's year-round. It's a seasonal business, and mainly from March all the way through October is the season in most areas. Of course, some areas the season starts later, but in most areas, April through October is the pool season. So if you were an industry that only made money about 6 months out of the year, and in 6 months you're not really making any money at all, or just, breaking even, or maybe even losing money, how would you recapture all of that money so that you can kind of fund it over the course of a year, like a sinking fund every month with the profit from other months? And the only way to do this logically is to charge a higher price point on everything so that you can use that profit during those months where you're making money to offset the other months where you're not. This is true in a lot of other industries, of course, like ice cream shops and yogurt shops, and also retail. They make like 80% of their money in November and December, and then they use that profit to offset some losses or maybe break-even months. So as long as you look at it like kind of with the big picture, you can see this is why everything costs so much in the pool industry, because they're trying to recover profits in a short period of time. They can use that to offset losses. And that's why, a little tiny Polaris nut for the Polaris 280 wheel costs $8. It's like a little plastic screw, and it's, it should just be like $1. But again, they got to recapture the profit because they only have a small window of the pool season here in the United States where they can make money. But there are ways on your pool route and taking care of your own backyard pool to save money. I think a lot of times spending money up front is a way to save money later. I'll give you an example. Like with the rental properties I have, when you're replacing something up front, like an HVAC system, the cost is about $8,000 for a small system for like a duplex. Once you buy that, of course, you're not going to have to worry about repairs or maintenance over the course of at least 5 or 6 years. And then usually that will last for about 20 years. So if you take that $8,000 and you break it down over a 20-year lifespan, so basically, that $8,000 HVAC unit that I put in cost about $400 per year. And of course, the savings on my taxes, because I'm going to write that initial amount off on my taxes, and the savings on having repairs out there all the time really pays for itself. And so this attitude can be translated really well to pool equipment and pool products, because you're not buying something and paying that money and it's going to just be a 1-year type thing. I mean, if I paid $8,000 for an HVAC and it's going to last 1 year, that would be a ridiculous investment. I know that they're going to last about 20 years. I mean, the manufacturer warranty is 10 years, I think, on the parts, and not the parts, but on defects and whatever. And so that product's going to last a long time. Same thing with pool products. So when you buy a new variable speed pump to replace a single speed pump, you're not buying that just for one season or 1 year. You're buying that over the course of the lifespan of that particular product. And I think a good way to look at it is kind of take your house and treat it like it's part of an HOA association where, the members of the association, if you've ever been part of a condo or townhome community, you pay monthly dues, and that covers landscaping, pool care, things like that. So kind of treat your own home like an HOA. And what they do is they develop these reserve fund studies. Actually, they're independent studies that they have to get to make sure that there's enough money coming in every month for the reserves so you can pay for things that are itemized. And for a pool and an association, they have all the equipment on this particular list and the lifespan of it. So a pump, I think the lifespan is anywhere from 8 to 10 years in most cases when they're doing this kind of assessment. So let's say you bought a VS pump and it cost $1,800 and you want to divide that. Let's just give it a 10-year lifespan. So that pump costs you $180 a year to run. And if you want to divide that by the 6-month season, it's about $30 a month during the season for that variable speed pump that you invested in $1,800 up front. So $30 a month for that VS pump. How much money are you saving each month in your electricity bill? I would say you're saving much more than that. In fact, it's going to be really significant because if you look at some of the manufacturer literature, now I'm not saying that it's accurate, I'm just saying that they have it up there. Some say you can save up to 90% on your cost, your electricity cost with a VS pump. And I say that's pretty true. I would say probably more, depending on how you run it, you could probably get to that 90%. It's going to save you a significant amount of money because a single speed pump is probably the second biggest energy use during the summer on your bill. And if you're like me in Southern California, with Southern California Edison, where you're on a 3-tiered system, the more kilowatt hours you use, the more it's going to cost you during that season. And it's one of those things where back in the day, it used to be a 4-tiered system, and then Edison thought, hey, we can make more money by making it 3-tier. Every time you hit a tier, your electricity bill goes up substantially because the kilowatt hours increase in the rate. Basically, let's say that in tier 1, I'm just giving this as an example, I'm not exactly sure how much it costs in each tier. I haven't looked at my bill in a while. But tier 1, let's say it's 18 cents a kilowatt hour. Tier 2 goes to like 28 cents a kilowatt hour. And then tier 3, which is typical where you're going to be during the summer with your AC running, with all the other things in your house going, with your single speed pump, you're going to be in the 3rd tier. And let's say it's 45 cents a kilowatt hour. So you can see how that adds up to a lot more money. And if you have a VS pump running where it's not using a lot of wattage, then you're going to save money. I would say you're going to save at least $50 to $60, maybe $80, depending on how big your house is, every month in your electricity bill. And so the cost of that pump is offset, and it's actually going to pay for itself in the savings over the course of that 10-year period. Now, of course, the pump may only last 8 years. It may last 15 years. There's no really way to know. I know that most of the VS pumps that I deal with easily last the 10-year period because, number one, they're really well made, and number two, they're made to last by the manufacturer, and that's why the parts on these things cost an arm and a leg. I mean, if you do have a VS pump and the drive fails, you might as well just buy a new pump because the drive for like a Pentair IntelliFlow is like $1,100, and that's just a control panel that goes on the back of the pump. It's not even the motor itself, and you can see that, of course, they have this built in because they know that you're going to have this pump for a very long time, and they're not going to sell you a new VS pump every 3 or 4 years. Again, go back to the beginning and just have your mindset that, the manufacturers and anyone in the pool industry is trying to recapture their profit and their product. So if the manufacturer has their VS pump that's going to last 10 years, of course, they're going to build in the profit into that price point up front, and that's why those pumps cost a lot more, because they're going to last a lot longer. If you buy a pump on Amazon, a VS pump, and you pay $400 for it, that's really going to be all you're going to get out of that particular product, or $500. I've seen some on there for like $500, and they're going to last maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years at the most. You're going to have problems possibly with that item because the price point kind of reflects the longevity of that product in the industry. Not all the time, but most of the time. The same goes for a saltwater generator. Now, will you save money on chlorine with a saltwater generator? At first, many years ago, you would not save any money on chemical costs because chemicals, to be honest with you, were dirt cheap. They were so inexpensive that even me, as a pool pro, I would just be using chemicals in excess. Let's say that I went to a pool and the chlorine level was at 1.1 parts per million, and I would, the chart says to put half a gallon of liquid chlorine to bring it up, I would just put the whole gallon in. If it says, half a pound of cal hypo, I would put a pound in because chemicals are so cheap, it didn't really matter. Measuring exactly to save money was not critical. Same with trichlor tablets. I always say that we were in the golden age of pool service back, 4 or 5 years ago, when you can buy a bucket of tablets for $78, 50-pound bucket of tablets. You can't even get like a 10-pound bucket of tablets for that price now. So, of course, everything's changed. The landscape has changed. And if you do put a saltwater generator in, are you going to save money over your chemical costs using chlorine in the pool? I'm going to use kind of the same formula that I use for the HVAC system and the VS pump. So let's take a saltwater system that costs $1,500, and let's also add in 2 salt cell replacements over the course of 12 years. So let's say the system lasts 12 years. Initially, you're going to pay $1,500, plus each salt cell is going to be $600. This is for a Jandy TrueClear. I'm going to use this as an example because the Jandy TrueClear salt cell replacement is pretty affordable. I really like the system. I like the affordability of it, and of course the affordability of the salt cell once you replace it. So if you add all this together, $1,500 plus $600 for a salt cell 5 or 6 years down the road, and then another one 5 or 6 years down the road, you're at $2,700 for the saltwater system. Divide that by 12 years, and you're going to have $225 a year for the saltwater system. Now, is this going to save you money in chlorine usage? I believe it will, because if you take that $225 number, you can't really do a lot with that with chlorine. I mean, cal hypo being $6 per pound, liquid chlorine being similar in price. And if you had a pretty decent sized pool, let's say 20,000 gallons, you would be spending a lot of money on trichlor tablets, also on liquid chlorine and cal hypo. Would you spend $225 a year? I think you would pretty easily spend $225 a year on chlorine. And I think the saltwater generator, if you look at it as this broken up over the course of how long the system is going to last you, it's going to definitely save you money in the long run with some upfront cost now. So I would say, in the past, I would say a saltwater system would save you nothing. It's just a convenience factor of being able to have it add chlorine to the pool. And I would also say that having that convenience factor is really important, because a lot of times if the chlorine level in the pool drops really low, you're adding shock and you're bringing the chlorine level up, you're having algae and you're fighting it, you're spending money on algicides. All of this costs money. And so in the long run, now I think a saltwater generator, if you get the right system with the right warranty, sized correctly for your pool, can save you money. Now all of this is really minute savings, I think. These aren't like earth-shattering savings. Maybe you'll save $100 or $200 a year on your cost using a VS pump and a saltwater generator. I mean, that's enough to move the needle for a lot of people, but saving $200 or $300 a year isn't significant in a lot of cases. There's other ways to actually save money with a very small upfront investment, and sometimes it takes no investment at all. It just takes your due diligence. One thing that I think Bob Lowry has left as a legacy is his great knowledge on pool chemistry and some ways of saving money. I mentioned that, shocking your pool and when your chlorine zeroes out is going to cost you money because you're going to have to buy chlorine and add it to 10 or 15 or 20 parts per million, and that costs money. But maintaining your pool and making sure that the chemicals are balanced is the best way to save money on your pool care. I'll give you a quick example, and something that he talks about a lot is that your chlorine level needs to be 7.5% of your cyanuric acid level. So to keep it simple, if you had a cyanuric acid level of 50 parts per million, you would need about 4 parts per million of chlorine in the pool to maintain that level to prevent algae from growing in the pool and prevent the chlorine from zeroing out. Because if you can maintain a proper chlorine level, you're going to avoid algicides, you're going to avoid adding a lot of chlorine to your pool. And so just adding a maintenance dose of chlorine to keep it at that level is important. I think this number is really a great number because as the cyanuric acid level increases in the pool, the free chlorine level that you need to maintain also increases. For example, if the cyanuric acid is at 100 parts per million, you're going to need 7.5 parts per million of chlorine in the pool to make sure you're not going to get algae, or to make sure that the chlorine level doesn't drop down to a really low level, that you have to bring it back up. And this is a great way to save money. Many people spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on chlorine every year needlessly because they're not maintaining their pool properly. And the same in your pool service business. If you're not maintaining the pools to the proper chlorine level, you're wasting a lot of money and resources by adding chlorine to the customer's pool, by shocking the pool, by using algicides. All that affects your bottom line. So the best way to prevent this from happening is to maintain the pool water and to make sure the cyanuric acid doesn't get too high in the pool. I think partial drains are a great way to prevent this. Sometimes you can do 1 inch, a week, or 2 inches just by opening up the hose spigot on the equipment. Be careful you don't drain the whole pool down by forgetting to close it. Partial drains are great. You can drain maybe a foot in the middle of summer and add a foot of water, and this will keep the cyanuric acid level in check. Because if you think about this formula, the 7.5 free chlorine level to cyanuric acid, if the cyanuric acid level is at 200 parts per million, you're going to have to keep 14 parts of chlorine in the pool, parts per million of chlorine in the pool, just to maintain an equilibrium so that you're not getting algae or any kind of problems. A lot of people, were always saying back in the 90s and 2000s that, chlorine lock, the chlorine's locked up in cyanuric acid, and that's why I'm getting algae in the pool, or this algae is chlorine resistant. All that is kind of a myth, because the real problem is that the cyanuric acid level was just too high and the chlorine level was too low in the pool. So if you had a cyanuric acid level of 200 parts per million and you had a chlorine level of 7 parts per million, you can see based on that formula that you just don't have enough chlorine in the pool, and that's why algae is blooming in the pool. And then, of course, this is what I recommend if you're doing pool service, is that you sell an enhancer to your customer, that they pay for the enhancer. This enhancer will allow you to use a lot less chlorine in the pool weekly. It'll keep algae from forming in the pool. And I'll go over the list of the enhancers that I prefer. And this could not be in any order particular, because you can pick the one you like the most. And these are what I would use in the pool. I would use borates to 50 parts per million. I would use a Pool RX, and then I would use phosphate and enzymes in the pool to help prevent algae. All these work effectively. One season, I was testing phosphate and enzymes in all my pools to see how they were. So I went without Pool RX for that season, and it worked really well. The phosphate and enzyme treatment, something like Pool Perfect, is a great product, and you just put it in weekly. Just put the maintenance dose in, and you'll be pretty amazed at how the chlorine is extended in the pool. I think it's a great 1-2 punch, phosphate remover and enzymes, and it's highly effective, and I did that for a season. Pool RX, of course, is one of my go-to products. I'll put this in all the pools on my route. I'll put it in the pump basket, and I usually put it in right about May after I clean the filters in April, and I make sure that everything is good, and it lasts the whole season in most pools without the need for a booster. Pool RX is great because it enhances the chlorine. It's a copper-based algicide that's chelated, so it's suspended, the copper is suspended, and that's why if there's a Pool RX, you're going to get copper readings all over the place, because they keep it from dropping out of solution and staying in the pool. And as you know, copper is a great algicide, so it even prevents the microalgae from forming. A lot of times there's algae in the pool that you can't really see until it blooms. This happens a lot. It used to happen a lot in the summer here, where you would get to a pool, everything looked fine, and then the next week you get there and it's just totally covered in mustard algae. It looks like, the pool hasn't been serviced in 3 or 4 weeks, but that's because there was microalgae that you couldn't see, and that just bloomed during that week. And this prevents that, and you can probably use about half the chlorine that you normally use with a Pool RX unit working effectively in the pool. And then borates to 50 parts per million is a great way to keep algae out of the pool. It's a natural algistat, which means it prevents algae cells from forming. And I think this is something that is essential for a lot of pools that are problem pools. If you put the borates in there at 50 parts per million, you're not going to have algae forming. It also will allow you to use a lot less chlorine. There's no exact number, but Bob Lowry came up with this formula. If you're using borates in the pool at 50 parts per million, you just need 5% of free chlorine to cyanuric acid. So if your cyanuric acid was at 100 parts per million, instead of needing 7.5 parts per million, with borates at 50 parts per million, you would just need 5 parts per million of free chlorine in the pool. So you're using significantly less chlorine in the pool with the borates in there. It also really helps with the pH. And as you know, the chlorine is much more effective at a lower pH. And so if the borate is a pH buffer, it's a secondary pH buffer. You have alkalinity, then you have your cyanuric acid as a buffer, and then lastly, you'll have borates at 50 parts per million, and this will keep the pH from bouncing high rapidly, which means that since the pH stays pretty stable, it's not going to keep the pH, even, but it stabilizes it so it's not rising rapidly in a pool. This means that the chlorine will be much more effective if the pH is lowered rather than, 8.0 or 8.2 in the pool. So all these help your pool maintain its chlorine. I call these enhancers. I think they're great. They're essential for the pool owner and essential for you as a pool service provider because you're going to cut down on your chemical usage dramatically, and you're going to, of course, not be using algicides, brushing the pool, and spending a lot of time there because time is money, and if you're there at the pool brushing algae for 10 minutes, you can't get more pools or add them to your account because you're putting out fires all the time. If you had a route where you had 70 pools and you had no algae, all the pools were maintained at a good chlorine level, the cyanuric acid was at 100 parts per million or less, you would have no issues on your pool route. You would be able to do the pools and add pools to your account because you're not spending so much time out there dealing with problems that can be prevented. And these problems, of course, cost you money with time and also with chemicals. And it may cost you business because customers may get tired of the pool looking bad and get someone else. So if you add all this together, a variable speed pump, a saltwater generator if you're going that direction, keeping the pool in balance, and using enhancers, all of this added together is going to eventually save you money in an industry where, again, everything is inflated because of the fact that the profits need to be recaptured during the season. And that's kind of how it's going to be going pretty much indefinitely. There's no change in the industry. It's always been this way. Everything in the pool industry costs a lot of money, from pool cleaning equipment to, automatic cleaners to chemicals. And chemicals especially have gone up dramatically in the last 4 years. And, it's not an even playing field by any means. You can save some money here with a coupon or a discount, buying the chemicals at a discount cost. But in the long run, it's not going to save you as much money as taking these proactive actions. And the most proactive thing you can do is keep your pool water balanced so you're not spending a lot of money, again, on shocking it and algicides. And of course, using an enhancer will really help you do this at a really low cost. It's an effective way to really maximize your savings on your pool care without a huge upfront investment. If you're looking for other podcasts I've recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. Just click on the podcast icon on the banner, and there'll be a drop-down menu of over 1,300 podcasts for you there. And if you're interested in the coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless. Real quick, if you're not using pool service software, try Skimmer free for 30 days at getskimmer.com/poolguy. Again, that's getskimmer.com/poolguy. Skimmer, everything you need to run your pool service business all in one app. Pool Service Pro, open a Leslie's wholesale account today and receive wholesale pricing on products you use every day. Leslie's Pool Supply offers convenient locations that are open 7 days a week. Another great benefit of opening a Leslie's wholesale account is Leslie's referral program. Get referred to a customer looking for weekly pool service. Save time and money and grow your pool service route and become a Leslie's Pro.